that's the main adhesive for using the Japanese papers. Have you used wheat starch before? Yeah. It's very particular how you cook it up, and you've got a whole recipe on the back on how to do it. Now, you can buy a number of different starches. The best is the shin shofu, which you can get from Conservation by Design, but it's expensive. It comes directly from Japan. But you could buy the Sigma, which is from a chemical company, and this lasts, this will last you an awful long time if you keep it cool and dry. But it's Sigma Aldrich, and it's starch for wheat, from wheat. And you use about a 5-to-1 concentration of that. So something like that would probably cost you about £10, and you could buy it as a group, or if there's any budget.
That's about 10.
Yeah.
Is that pure wheat starch?
Pure wheat starch with no gluten in. Because if you use starch derived from flour, like the old flour and water, that's full of gluten, and that tends to harden, crystallise over age, and discolours your paper, and it can often separate as well. So it's just a pure white powder, and you mix that 5-to-1, soak it overnight, but you've got the recipe in your files. And then you cook it over, I usually use a saucepan, non-stick, like this. So you turn the heat up quite high, and then when it starts to boil, it goes through two or three different phases. It starts off quite opaque, and then it tends to thicken up. It's almost like making, a fancy roux. And then it tends to slacken off slightly and becomes more transparent. It'll take you about a good half a pot, will take you half an hour at least of stirring. Don't skimp on that, because you need to break the grains of wheat starch, let them burst, so the heat and the agitation of the stirring helps to burst those grains, so you get a very lustrous and sticky paste, which is great. So this has been used for 2,000 years in Japan, and it's a byproduct from the food industry, where they use gluten to make lots of sweets and stuff, and this is what is left. So they started to use it in scroll mounting. And do you know much about scroll mounting? Well, they're very complex. Obviously, you need to, and the same with hand scrolls as well, you need to be able to roll it and unroll it. So you need flexibility of the paper and the grain direction. We've spoken about that before, haven't we? But also a flexible paste. But they're stored most of the time in a roll like this, both hand scrolls and brought out on special occasions. But they're very complex, probably up to 6 layers of linings on the back in different concentrations. And this is a technique that's derived from scroll mounting, and it's joining sheets of paper, and that's what you want to do. Right. So it's an age-old tradition. We'll come to that in a minute. But I thought I'd show you how to prepare the wheat starch. So if you pretend we've cooked it madly, and this is how it comes out. So you feel that it's quite jelly-like.
How long will it stay like that? Will it dry out over time?
Well, you can keep it in the fridge, and you can even freeze it. So you can make a batch. It's not the best, but you really should use wheat starch fresh within a few days. If you keep it in the fridge, covered over, it will last at least a week. You'll tell when it's gone off, because it will smell and go mouldy. It will develop penicillin on the top. That's what you normally find in fridges. Okay, so you can see that's quite jelly-like, and it's not very pliable at the moment. So we need to go through a couple of phases in order to get it liquid like this, and nice and smooth in order to use it. Now I'm using specialised pieces of equipment, but you could use an ordinary plastic bowl like that and a plastic sieve. These come directly from Japan. This is a norabon, they're made from cedar, so the wood colouring doesn't ooze out into the paste because you don't want it tainted. So these are handmade. This costs about £100. So as the bowl expands, the brass holds it in place. These are also handmade. This a sieve, horsehair sieve, again cedar. So they last for years if you look after them. But you could use any amount of plastic, but not metal. You don't want metal in contact with your paste because little tiny bits will fall into the paste and will deteriorate with age. Okay.
How much would something like that be?
They're both about £100. If you want supplier, yeah. The same with the specialised brushes, which you'll be using today. They have two different styles. That's the Tokyo style, the square. I don't like that. It's not angular. It doesn't sit in your hand so well. And this is the Kyoto style, the rounded. Now you think that was quite brutal. This is made from hemp palm. But this is fantastic for smoothing paper. And when you've got the paper with the paste on to align the fibres.
It's quite hard, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean you can pass that around. This is a norabake. This is made from horsehair, again handmade. They have gut and cedar, and this is used mainly for pasting. But my favourite, and I've had this years, is the shigoki. You can only buy them directly from Japan, these. And this is multifaceted. It's good for applying moisture, for pushing the paste through the sieve and mashing, and also for applying large areas of paste because you've got control. So that's a shigoki. It will cost you £100. If you want a supplier, I can give it to you. But that should last you 25 or 30 years if you look after it.
Did you say that was horsehair as well? The bristly bits?
Yes, and it's a mixture, I think, with this one, sheep and horse. We've got a number of other brushes up there, but you will be using these 3 brushes today. So I'm letting you have experience of these to see how beautifully they work with the materials. But you could undo some of these. Now you can get these are called pake brushes, sheep hair. You can get them from any art shop, even Chinese supermarkets have them. They can molt a little bit, but the more you use them, the better. You could use a stocky version of that, and they come in different sizes, or even a good quality decorator's brush. You know, if you pass those around. Or these plastic ones. These are really quite good, actually. So you don't necessarily have to use these, you know, because you can't spend £500, maybe just now and again, although probably the paper studio should have a set. This is another specialised brush which I think would be extremely brutal. This is a pounding brush. This costs £500, this brush. I watched the National Treasure, it was, make this in Kyoto. Had to have a special appointment. And you use that to pound 2 sheets of Japanese paper together. So it actually fibrillates the paper, making it more flexible, and you need less paste when you're using a pounding. So they pound the backs of scrolls during certain lining processes to mesh the 2 or 3 layers together. But that's a very specialised brush, really. You can use something like that too.
Yeah, I was thinking when I was in Kyoto, I used this smaller one.
Yeah. You can get those through Conservation by Design. I think something like that would be about £60. But you can use it. also another bits of kit. These are from Japan. These are burnishing beads. With Japanese paper, you can burnish it beautifully. And the backs of scrolls are always burnished to repel fingerprints and also make it more flexible and a slight sheen. And normally they use carnauba wax and they apply it up and down or even in a circular motion, and then they use the beads over many hours to compact the paper and give it a shine. So that's a possibility, you know, if you're looking for that type of aesthetic to burnish.
Does it slightly stop the bleeding out of the paint, you know, the reaction?
Not really, no. It will compact the paper down, but no, not really. Maybe minutely, but nothing too drastic, unfortunately. You'd have to put a size on in conjunction with that. Okay then, so I'll move these out of the way. And it's a good idea when you're doing anything like this to have as little on your table as possible. Obviously, I've got glasses here. Always use the bowls and the sieves slightly damp. So I'm taking the cooked paste and I'm just going to push it through the sieve. Okay. So you need quite a firm action. I know you're not making paste today. If it was all day, then I would have got you to do it, but try and control the paste. It doesn't get all over the place and on your fingers. As you know, the Japanese work very particular, don't they? It's a very beautiful thing to watch them. So you normally sieve it twice. I've already sieved this once. And then you just take the underside and then stick it in the middle. So now we need to start mashing action. I mean, there's a particular way of holding these brushes, but as long as you've got a good support and you're pushing the paste away from you, then you'll get an even action. So push it and then rotate the bowl. And you do this really for about 5 minutes. You'll see the consistency of the paste change quite dramatically.
So it goes to this without any water in it? I just assume.
No, that is water.
That's got water in it.
Yes, you add it very slowly after. If you put loads of water in now, it would go into lumps. And without mashing, can you imagine adding water to that? Be like the most horrendous.
Like my roast sauce.
You
need a delia whisk then.
Yeah. You just need elbow action, really. So what we're using today is 2 different consistencies of paste, a thick paste and a thinner one. That's slightly thinner, and that's going to be used for joining the wet tear fibres together, and the thicker paste for the straight cut overlaps. Always check your brush as well, because sometimes you get lumps forming in the brush stock, and when you add water, then they can often come out and make your paste lumpy.
So does this process further squash those grains?
Yeah. We're stretching them out, and you'll see the difference in these. I'm only doing a tiny bit just to show you I mean, a wooden bowl is good because it's got grain that you're pushing it against, but it's not necessarily coating it with plastic. You should carry on a bit more than that, but you can feel the difference now of the paste. Just stick your finger in, it's a bit messy. Compared with that, genuine.
Yeah.
Very different.
Yeah. It's like Vaseline now.
Yes, yeah, it is.
Is it good for your skin?
No.
Wipe it off. So you dry out like a prune.
Might give you a frozen smile. When it sets. Okay, so you need cold water. So normally I would do this a little bit longer, but it's like watching paint dry. So tiny little bit to begin with, almost like a cooking course. And then continue mashing. So just a tiny amount avoids it going into lumps. And you continue. I mean, you can use Japanese wheat starch as thin cream. If you're laminating 2 sheets of Japanese paper together, half of that, again diluted, will be enough to stick. The least paste you use, the more flexible the paper. So, leave it there. But this is a staple, certainly in conservation. And if you are working with Japanese paper, I suppose you could use wallpaper paste, which is a cellulose derivative, but it's not going to be the same as wheat starch.
When I came around the conservation department when I was in Colbourne, we talked about, or it might have been in the lecture, you talked about the ability of undoing what you do in conservation. So
yes, reversibility.
Is this reversible then?
Yeah. I mean, wheat starch can be a little tenacious, but yes, it is reversible if you use water, warm water particularly, and enzymes. You sometimes have to use enzymes. But yes, we're all thinking about reversibility and conservation, although in reality it's a nonsense because you wouldn't want to reverse the, you know, surface dirt, for instance. You wouldn't want to put that back. So it is a bit controversial. Okay, so that's a paste that I'm going to use for the straight cut. So I need this brush. Other purposes. Okay, so we've got slightly thinner and the thicker paste. It's very important if you do buy these Japanese brushes to wash them well. At the end of the day, we usually soak them and then wash them really well because they can collect a lot of paste and get, you know, very, very hard. And then we usually shake them before we hang them up. I've prepared my paste, and most of the conservation techniques that we use, it's all about preparation. I suppose it's the same in fine art, isn't it? It's preparation. So what we're going to do today is, I know they're fairly small scale, and I know you're thinking, is it large sheets? But you can scale this up, but it shows you how you can join sheets of paper very effectively. Quite long rolls, but obviously you can make them larger. But I wouldn't go like massive. You're thinking of like really big. You would have to use a slightly different technique, and you'd probably have to come into this building to do that, I think.
How big would you mean massive?
Well, probably half the size of this.
About 500?
Yeah, yeah. Or even a sheet this sort of size, you know, full sheet. Because what you would need is, unless you've got a careful helper, I mean, I could do it, but if you're not kind of used to it, because you need to get the adhesive along that level and just get a very small overlap.
Yeah.
You could work with somebody, but
When I've tried the little bits, what's happened is I've got
puckering.
But yeah.
Yeah, and you may get puckering a little bit today, but once these are joined, these sheets, then you can relax them down with a water spray and a brush like this over a piece of plastic and get this completely and utterly flat. So any distortions in that area will flatten out very easily. Okay, so this is that's a wet cut where you've got, if you pass those around, have a look in the light. So this is fibres joined up together. That's the more difficult, but you'll be starting off with straight cut joins like that.
Like this one.
Yeah, and then going on to doing that one. That's for a more diaphanous kind of seamless effect.
This one.
Yes. That's another one. That's slightly too lean. You don't want to. They're terribly strong. Even you see the fibres just touching. But, you know, really strong.
Is this machine-made paper or handmade?
No, handmade.
It's
All of
handmade.
this is handmade. But equally, you could use machine-made.
It just really looks almost just like a fold in a way.
Yeah.
Or not
Yeah.
even that, is it?
Yeah.
I'm amazed at that.
Floor,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, you can wet cut, and if you're joining sheets this side as well,
Yeah.
you'll need to have not only wet cut along the straight edges where you're joining the individual sheets, but on the top and bottom as well. And this, you can see, is such paper. This is quite fine. Okay, so we've spared no expense. I've given you 2 sheets of handmade shigoki paper, which you're going to practice making a straight cut roll first, and then a wet cut roll, and then you can take those over with you.
This is over that.
And you can dismantle them and try them again and again if you want to.
Did you say this one's the...
That's the wet cut on all 4 sides. So I'll show you how to square up sheets of paper to begin with, because what you need to have are the sheets the same size, with the same grain direction and the same side orientated. So you've got to be very particular about the method in which you use, otherwise you'll get differences. You may want that, you know, in your work, but on the whole, you probably want things fairly uniform. And they can be stored like that for years.
How can you tell which grain direction it is?
Well, the grain direction normally with a sheet of handmade paper. Okay, you've got the chain line. Can you see
The ley lines.
the chain link
Yes.
lines? Yeah. Okay. Now, when this sheet is made, it would be swashed or sloshed, or the pulp that way and off. So the the fibre will orientate itself along there, okay? So it will actually tear along this way, much easier than across the grain. Okay. Across the grain is where it expands the most, although with handmade paper it will be more even. If it's machine made, this will be much greater, the dimensions across the grain. So if you're using Japanese paper on a roll like this, which is machine made, yeah, okay. So if that's made on the roll this way, the fibre orientation will be that way, so it will tear very easily that way. And the expansion when you wet it will be quite dramatic this way.
Don't all papers have those lines, do they, the ley lines? You
No,
can't see
this
from
is made
one.
on a wove.
Yeah.
This is a machine wove.
So how would you tell them now, just by tearing it, which way to?
Yes. Yeah. If you get more resistance, then that's across the grain, and that's where it will expand. Because if you look at fibre like that, along the length, it will grow, but it tends to grow much more sideways, so that it expands much more like that. But that has fundamental, you know, implications for how you work with paper. You know, how it behaves. If you want something to hang in a certain way, you can control it by cross-graining it, you know, so you can get it much flatter, or if you want to increase the curl or kind of movement, then you can go with the grain. So when they're using Squalls, they always go with the grain, so it's like that. So it will roll much easier than unroll. If you did it the other way around, then it would tend to resist, and
So
that's the method.
I know I'm a bit dim really, but if I wanted to make a piece that was 4 of those sheets,
Yeah.
could I join that to that, and then that to that, and then
Yeah.
the whole lot down the middle?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you wanted to, rather than doing this is cut these prior. This is out of one sheet, but you could have, as long as you keep the grain direction going the same, you can join them. Okay. You got to be careful.
You do 2, 3, 1 rather than 2, 2.
I would step it if you were doing. I mean, that's what they tend to do in scroll mounting. Not have the join, because if you have the join for, well, it will be much thicker and actually take on be more rigid.
Right.
So you would step it almost like you know, bricklay wall, like that, and that would go. Always the Japanese and Chinese, they always overlap in the same direction as well for continuity.
Right. Yes.
So if you do it, there's no hard and fast rule, but if you do it, they tend to do it from the left, but if you did it from the right, do everything from the right. Okay, so we've got a sheet of Japanese paper. So first of all, we need to square it. So you've got, in your handout, you've got the method of squaring. So all you need to do, and obviously you can do this any size you want, but this is normal. Just fold it in half roughly. Make sure you don't get too many creases. If it's undulating like that, that's fine, because you can easily get creases out of Japanese paper by simply dampening it down and putting it under blotting paper in a press, so you can ease out any of the creases, so don't worry about that in a moment. Then fold it again, so you've got it in 4 like that. Okay, so we've got a lot of rough edges, the deckled edge, and obviously this is joined, so we need to trim those off roughly first, and then we'll square it up. So you've all got these wooden You've got to be careful because this is just pine and you can cut into them really easily. So just pop it a little way in. Always wait so you've got it nice and secure. And then you're going to use a scalpel blade. Now these are used by surgeons, so be very careful. Traditionally they would use this, but it's not terribly sharp, and that will cut through. It's made like a samurai sword, 2 different types of metal. But that can cut through, you know, big wadges of paper. And you can do more than 1 sheet at a time. You could do, say, 5 sheets if you wanted to make a, you know, a large amount of rolls. But this is just showing you the principle of it. So always take a good hold of the wooden dowel and then carefully, don't let go of that, just make sure that it's released before you, because if you let it go and move it, then it can change position. Do the same on the other side. It gets a bit more tricky with the deckled edge because they can be quite wavy, but take it as far as you need to get a clean edge. There is a bit of waste obviously with the paper, but it's worth it, because if you don't get the paper lined up, it's a nightmare to get those absolute perfect overlaps. You just can't do it. You could measure everything. You know, you could measure, you know, 10 by 14 or whatever, but if you're doing stacks of paper and doing many rolls, this is the quickest way to do it. Much more time effective. It's also more rooted in craft. Right, so I've got rid of the rough edges. So smooth it out as much as you can. Now take the long wooden bar, and what we're doing now, we're using an awl, is to take the top sheet only over, just loosely, and line it up as best as you can. It might be slightly out, but that's what we're trying to correct now. So hold that, and then make 2 little marks, just slightly in from the edge, okay? Always 2, so you know exactly, and go right through the whole stack of sheets. And then do the other side as well. Okay, flip that back. So you've got registration this side and that side. So what I want to do now, and you can use this wooden rod to flatten out the paper, it helps. And you can also put a weight on there. Line up the dots. Just move that a bit. Got to be careful how you mess around with it. Believe me, this is a lot quicker than measuring each sheet and cutting it. And even though they might be slightly different sizes, they're all lined up together, each sheet.
What I'm interested in is you're not sure that they're all 90 degrees, those corners.
No, it's not necessary.
Isn't it?
No. And they certainly don't do it in scroll mounting. And do the other side. They often, with scroll mounting, make these kind of scrolls up ahead of time, you know, for different jobs, and store, you know, sometimes hundreds of them. Now try not to move it too much, keep it nice and together. Always use a little weight if you're not sure. So we're doing the other side now, so the rod goes in the middle. Take the top layer over, and 2 little marks. And then cut that edge.
Are you cutting the marks away?
Well, just to the mark.
To the mark?
Yeah. As long as you're consistent, it doesn't really matter.
So the 2 marks, I can't quite see from the 2 marks that are parallel with one
Yeah.
another.
Do you want to have a look?
Yeah.
See there? And you can see it's slightly out on this side, but they're more or less perfect.
Like, yeah.
And is
Yeah,
this
you see that?
squaring? Basically, just
Squaring
making
the-
sure that both halves
It's
are-
squaring each sheet to each other rather than squaring as in geometric square. Okay, it's not. You know, they don't use measurements really that much in Japanese, and they use a different
Nice.
form.
Mm.
They use bu and sun. They have a different measurement. They do have some rules. They'll measure the kind of dimensions of the design, but not necessarily the sheets of paper. It's all done by feel and precision, really, but not measuring. Okay, so we've got 4 sheets pretty much lined up. And, you know, maybe a squidge out, but hardly anything. Remember, you can do 30 sheets at one time if you wanted to. But obviously at this stage we've got 2 sheets with the smooth side up and 2 sheets with the rough side. So you just need to take one, it doesn't matter which side, and reverse the second. Bring that one over and reverse that. So they're all shiny side. It can make a difference. Okay, so we now come to joining. So again, this is quite a quick way of getting the paste on fairly evenly. Just roll it up fairly tight. Never works in demonstrations, but you'll see. Try again. Worked this morning. Certain papers have different behaviour. Okay, so you've got a nice step. Like that. Can you see that? So you can apply the paste. I've moved it now. Apply the paste evenly along the ridges. Now, I brought it to the end of the table, and that's how you'll be working, because you paste up here. You don't want to be pasting up here, because you need to paste up and then drag the first sheet across. Okay? So you can put the weight on if you want. Now I'm going to use the thick paper. want a thin application. You take the excess off on the board. Make sure it's well and truly even. You can test whether it's nice and even just by placing a little bit on the board. So, I'm just going to paste the whole of the sheet. Top one I don't want to go too far, but you need to make sure that you've got it well and truly covered. Take the top one and just drag it over. Don't invert it or anything, just drag it over. And then take this one and then you just line it up. I'll use this brush. Oh. Things never working.
Are you overlapping slightly?
This is an overlap, yes.
About 2 millimetres or something like that.
Well, it's one boo. It's not terribly good, but you get the idea. Then you can roll that up. It's not great. Maybe the next one will be better. You don't want to leave it in situ because it can it can actually stick to the board. You just take this one over. That's better.
Do you have to be quite fast when you're doing it?
Yes, because the paste will dry out otherwise. Spend a bit more care on that. And then the last one. Put it slightly. Yes, but it dries fairly quickly. And quite strong, already. Whoops. I don't think I've got the paste not quite right, but it's a new paste actually. We shouldn't really, but yes, it's normally quite strong. So you leave it a little while before you roll it up tightly, but it does dry fairly quickly. Okay, so that's the principle of the straight cut. Okay.
Beautiful, isn't it? It's
Yes.
it's really
Do
beautiful.
you not need to do the back so that it's...
No.
Will that just say?
No.
I suppose
It's
the
fine.
board has pressed
Yes.
against it as you press down.
It is, but because it's quite a tacky adhesive, and we're lifting it more or less straight away, it will hold. It will. But don't move it quite so quickly.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we'll do the same, but with the wet cut, which is slightly more complicated. I've trimmed this off. It's a real bother having to put your glasses on and off. Can't bear it.
Very, very good.
No, can't wear those. Right, so I'm going to wet tear these. So I've trimmed them off But instead of doing the little dots and then trimming it, we've just roughly trimmed it. Do you remember at the beginning? And then we would do the dots, but slightly in towards the edge, because we need to get a grip of it. Then we're going to score through with, to bruise the surface, the top surface. Yeah. So I'm going slightly in from there. Oh, what am I doing? Sorry, I'm not thinking now. Take it over. So I'll just show you how to do the wet cut. So you want to check that it's not too sodden. Fairly even. So take your spatula or whatever you've got. You can use anything really that just bruises the surface, and just go along there. It just increases the water penetration by bruising the surface. And take the brush, just go along. Might need a little bit more. And then you just need to pull. Sometimes you have to unpack it in 1 or 2 layers. You know, if it's quite a tenacious paper, this is quite thick, some of it will come off. But don't let go of this bar, otherwise you'll get a very uneven edge. A bit fiddly. Okay, you can tidy those bits up if you need to. And then you would use a brush to smooth those fibres so they're sticking out in one direction. You've got an edge like that. And you can see how they would join really nicely together, those long fibres. Moved it all now. I should have left it flat. It's the thing when you're demonstrating, you have to show things in different stages. Okay, so use the rod to get it even. What is that? Sounds like a demented bee or something. So score it through. Sometimes you can score it once you've gone over with the water. If it's quite a thick paper. You can go over it again. You can do individual sheets like this if you wanted to, you know, if you had one large. So we're doing mass production.
Maybe another thing worth mentioning is something that on the recent project that I was doing, that we were doing the same but with a quite thick hemp paper.
Oh, yeah, very
and
woody.
The idea, and so much stronger, but tougher to pull, certainly.
Yeah, much
but
tougher.
The reason I'm mentioning it is if you want to get a sort of a paper that has a look or reduce the size of the handmade sheet to have the look of having a deckled edge, it's not just the Japanese papers that you can obviously do it with. It's say with the different European papers, cotton papers, whatever. Just using the same technique, and like Jane says, to put the to put that impression a second time after it's been wet, and then it should tear fine.
Yeah. So they do tend to stick together a little bit, so you might want to just separate the sheets out.
You know when you said you can flatten the creases out of paper, how
Yes.
much do you actually wet them, and how do you wet them with what? You
Well,
dampen them.
It depends on what you want to do with it. I mean, they can tolerate being immersed.
All right.
I mean, I don't think we'll have time today, but I mean, I could do one with a demonstration of flattening paper and pressing.
Yeah, that would be very helpful.
But if we do it now, it'll be messy and not... Okay, so roll it up again. See if this works.
Also just vaporising it and using a sort of
Yeah.
brushing it out from the centre.
Yes. Well, there's different approaches. That's much better. Now, use your brush and get those fibres nice and smooth. They're very hygroscopic, shorter fibres, so they expand more. So we're using the thinner paste. But you could go a lot thinner than that, but it's probably easier for you to work with slightly thicker paste to begin with. Okay, so just check how it's lying. And then okay. So same principle again, just take the top layer off. Hold it there. And the second. See, just trying to get those little fibres. It's not great, the contrast on this board. I'd prefer a darker board. You see, in Japan they work on lacquer tables, red lacquer.
Right.
Much easier. Careful, you lift it up because you don't want it to stick. What's that do? And this paste is just not behaving like the Shinshofu, because normally it...
So if you were doing it on a lacquer table, would it kind of not stick to the base?
It doesn't stick, no.
Yeah.
We had a job actually preparing this paste. It was so sticky and horrible. It's taken us most of the day to, half a day anyway, to prepare it. I think there's some problem with it. Stick it too quickly. think when you come to doing yours, you'll need to lather it up a little bit more than to get it stick. I don't like that. I mean, that's not good practice to have the adhesive that far away from the fibres, really. Because you'll get more puckering if you're not careful.
But when it's dried, will you see how far that adhesive's gone or not?
No, you won't see it, but it'll look more tense around that area. The paste is not great. So the least movement really till it's dry. It'll be fine when it's dry, but easy. Just the fibres are clinging on.
So if you were going to join it this way as well, would you do the
so you do
tearing of all four sides?
all four sides, yes.
Right, okay.
And then I would probably do a roll and then attach it. Or you could do individual sheets if you prefer the larger, but you could, what they do in scroll mounting is they'll lay another roll. It's more difficult, obviously, you need somebody to help you. But you would lay it along this edge, just the same way as you've done.
There we go. That's fantastic.
But it's very strong, even though it's not dry.
Physical integrity, is it?
If it dried overnight, then it would be fine. Then I would let it dry overnight before you reuse them.
And I suppose it would be okay to do one bit of joining one day and then another bit of joining on another day.
Oh yes, that's fine.
Yeah.
No, that's fine.